Small snafu there. Thank you Silent ST for catching that and letting me know about it. I guess it was pretty obvious, so it's more of a thank you for letting me know type situation. Okay. I'll leave this way, but I don't love that setup there. Now let's keep fixing these build errors. So I've discovered that if I do that and then that, it like messes up the jumps by one line on that file, but only by one line. And then if I keep adding more new lines, they keep working to the wrong spot that's just off by one, which is very unusual, don't you think? I mean, it should have placed markers right away. What? I thought I got that fixed. Hold on a second. Oh geez, it's right here. How did it end up right there still? I don't even know. Okay. Jeez, a Pete. Alright, okay. Well, I mean, streaming's hard. What can I do? Alright, let's see this one more time. So if I do this and I jump to them, I'm on the right spot. Okay. If I come up here and I enter one new line, it stays on the right spot. Okay. Now if I come up here and I build, I let it do the whole thing. Okay, it's done. And I go to the first one, and then I enter a new line. Okay. So I think what must be happening is that when I do this, and then I jump to here, and then I do this, it's parsing again. It's reparsing, even though it's already got some of them done. So one of the changes I made in 4.026 helps to keep the sticky system from breaking down when you hit jump to error too soon, in the sense that it now will reparse and get the errors that weren't there the first time you jumped to error. So that if the buffer is growing, it will get more errors. But it does a full reparse, and maybe what it wants to actually do is just grow the existing thing from where it left off, and leave the other ones in the correct locations without clearing them out. So that's something we should fix before shipping again. Make that work even more tightly. Anyway, with that mystery fixed, let's keep doing this. List all locations parameters. List all locations parameters. Okay, that one. List all locations parameters. List all locations parameters. List all locations of identifier parameters. List all locations parameters. So the difference is the list all locations of identifier uses get token or word under position to get that. So I'm going to take both of these and move them up here. Okay, so I actually do want to rewrite this. Because you see all these things down here are stupid. List all locations. We're getting that string there, passing in match whole word, match substring, match whole word, case insensitive. Yeah, okay. So what we're going to do, list all locations. Query parameters. It's going to take an applications link. It's going to take substrings bool and a case insensitive bool, and it's going to basically do what this shit down here is doing, like this, but instead of get token or word and all that nonsense, it's going to do get search get query string app space size of space. This thing is going to return a string. Whoops. Query bar return bar string bar.prompt list locations for make string cap on the string space. Don't pass in that bar there. And if instead of that I just passed in query string like this, I could do make string slowly here and query string here, and that would let me do get query string list all locations for, and then both this and this actually belong under helper.cpp somewhere. Sorting this in the future is a goal. Query user string. One second. All right. All right. So now, instead of saying get search all string, we're just going to call list all locations query parameters app, and this is match whole words, so not substrings, case insensitive, false, not case insensitive. and this thing over here will do the list all locations parameters with the 1 and the string that it gets back from that, and it'll do the flags with those bools to make that happen. So this is it. Alright, this is list all substring locations, so this becomes a true. And this is where hopefully we're saving some lines, right? Okay. And you can see that this down here follows the same basic structure. Hi, Rupin. Rupin3, how's it going? Of selection parameters. Right. So we still have code duplication one layer below that, or above it, or whatever, right? So right here, hopefully you can see quite clearly that these are very similar in structure. And it makes you wonder what we're going to do about that in a second here. But let me fix the name first. All right. Now I'm going to put this under here. We're going to take that out for now and consider putting it back in later. That's just the thing, that if there's only one type, instead of putting up a search list, it just jumps you straight to it. which is probably a nice thing to have in there, but we're going to have to figure out the dependency order between jumps and searches. To make that correct. Okay. So, build string, I'm taking you to helper. Alright, still doing some organizational stuff here, people. We want to get to the point where these live over here. I think they can do it now, so let's just try. Boom. Perfect. Okay, so now we're not quite out of the water yet because some of this stuff feels a little bit unusual. So this right here, for instance, list all locations of selected range. First of all, let's deal with this naming scheme because list all locations is just becoming tiresome to write. We're gonna just call this list. Now I'll leave it like this. Alright, we don't need to get overly pedantic about figuring out how to name these things, but that's definitely helpful to have it like this. So now, what we want to do is we want to get to this question of, alright, here we get a string. Here we have to do a little bit more work, but then we just get a string and move on. And here we do a crazy amount of work, and eventually we've got a string and we go on. Okay, so there's like this internal thing here. It's like list single parameters, and the way that works is you pass it general memory, partition, right, partition, all occurrences of part. Yeah, so that's a scratch. and then since this is single, we pass it the string, and then we pass it substrings and case insensitive as that, and I think this is one of these, and then selected range. Interesting. So if I did that, it changes to that panel over there. What is selected range? List all locations of selection. I don't use this one. Control Shift G. Yeah, I don't love that. I'm going to say that by default you should do this as well. And then all of these can be tied together by the similar pattern. Boom. Right? List single, app, general, scratch, string, substring, case insensitive. So the only difference between this and the thing it's calling is that this one is not told what string to use. It deduces it, and single figures out, or is just the pattern for what we do once we know which panel to use, and once we know which string we're doing a single string query on, right? So there we go. That's nice. We can do that here. List single parameters. Again. App. General scratch. Strings, substrings, case insensitive. This one down here is more complicated. It does all this stuff about does this stuff about pushing stuff onto the arena here. So but I feel like we could just rewrite this as string equals get text in view range, right? And then all I have to do is say here's app, here's the view, yeah, literally all of that will go away. This part here is going to actually say list single parameters, app, general, scratch, strings, substrings, case insensitive, and everything leading up to that looks like that, and this here is that. So we get the buffer, we get the range of the view, we find out its length. If it's non-zero, we try to allocate that much space, so we do need an arena. If we succeed in allocating that much space, we read it out of the buffer, and we make a string out of it. Which we then return to here and pass to here. Perfect. Alright, so let's see how we're doing here. Alright, so that's 20 lines of code that's been reduced so far, which is pretty good considering the amount of new code that also got written. Okay, and I'm going to look at how tight that has all become. Very good. Alright, so what's happening here? What's happening here is we've got some string space. We want to query, we want to get a query string, we're going to pass that. We're using a different message now, and then we pass it this space. Do. If string.string does not equal 0, we can get rid of of that shit and just do string list type definition build string helper. I assume that's because this just takes string pointers the whole way through. Yeah. Alright, so we're gonna do a little bit of fancy footwork here. I don't have one yet. Alright. Mictor one-time code new project. Build target will be onetime.cvp. Output directory will be I don't know, make a build directory. The output will be onetime mictor build, just to make sure everyone's happy. And now I'm going to load that project, and when I run it, it's going to say it can't find the onetime.cvp. There's onetime code I just wanted to run once. By Alan Webster. Include standard IO int main. Alright, so I'm going to put that over there. I'm going to put helper right here. Today what we want to do is something like someday I'm going to end up wishing I had standard int right here. We're going to have one called print build string combinations. Alright, so we're going to have basically string combo type cputter and string, and we're going to have string combo type count. That should do the trick. And then we're going to do we'll just do a depth for loop. So I0 equals 0, I is less than string combo type count plus plus I. Those are I0, I0. Boom, boom. I0 becomes I2. And then here I0 becomes I1. And then for each of these, we're going to print out static string new line build string partition part comma space. So there's our first thing. Now you know what? I'm going to do int I3. I0 means I square bracket 0. Doot doot doot. I1 means I square bracket 1. Doot doot doot. And whoops, don't do that. I2 means I square bracket 2. Doot doot doot. Then what we can do is for int j equals 0, j is less than the const, we'll call this param count 3. Plus plus j. Alright, then we're going to switch on ij case string combo type cputter string combo type string. Alright, so if we want to print out the parameter cputter, what we'll do is we'll say printf out char star s %d and we'll have a little thing that's like up here, always put out a new comma before one of these things, and that D will come from the J. If we want a string, then what we do is string. Right? Okay, once that's done, printf out the close parenthesis, open brace, new line. At this point, it looks to me like we have everything we need. We just need to do some legwork. Okay, so this part's a little interesting. So sr.memory size equals, and then we need actually like another for loop like this one. Well, it depends. How clever is my string library? String size. Not clever enough. Okay. So, another for loop. This time, if j does not equal 0, we will print out a space plus space, and then we drop our if it's a cputter, we take string size, otherwise we take this thing dot size, and then once all of that is done, we can printf out semicolon new line string equals push array, oops, partition char sr.memory size. Then we're going to do if sr.string does not equal 0, boom. Right here we'll do return sr, boom. And then, okay, so here we're just going to do that for j equals 0, j is less than param count plus plus j, append, oops, printf out, append onto sr, s%d, j. Okay. Thought I said make dir build. Jerks. Alright, 1 second. Build, yeah, we need to go here. Pop up real quick to one-time code, and we're just gonna find you, and you. You get out of here. There we go. Oh, I didn't actually call my procedure. Boom, 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 boom. Alright, that took a little longer to set up since that was my first time doing one-time code on this computer. But now we've got it, we can go back to helper.cbp and just paste it in. And that gives us all the combinations of C strings and the other kind. Let me go back to here, and I'm just going to close out all of this now. We may come back to it, but there we go. So that just jumped this line count up considerably, I'm sure. But it's handy to just get these things done. So there we go, that's done. Back at search, we can now turn you into a string. And yeah, that should work. Whoops. So what was the damage? Alright, that was like 100 lines of code. Well, 90. But it is what it is. What can you do? So now we take in string. Let's reload the project here. There we go. Alright. That's much better. Now let's finish clearing this up. So this is just the simple get a query, list all locations of type, definition of identifier. This is the get token or word under position. If string.string does not equal 0. And there we go. Yeah. Alright. So that's finished up that. We can come back here, take you out, and keep trucking along. So, combined write commands. I wonder where you belong. So I could put you under base commands. I could make a new file for you. Where do I want you guys to live? Could be scope commands, but that's only slightly appropriate. Most of these don't have anything to do with inserting. The only things that do inserts are base commands, auto indent, and scope commands. I feel like of those, base commands is the most appropriate, so that's where you guys are going. that definitely, okay, so that relies on auto indentation. So that's a good counter argument to putting it there. Alright, fine. Fine. I'm going to put it in its own file. Why am I looking at the buffer file name? That doesn't make any sense. So we get the current view in the current buffer. Jeez, oh Pete, this is really weird. Okay. Definitely not the way I'm gonna keep this. This code is not written correctly for my current sensibilities at all, so let's take a look. First things first, change active panel app. Secondly, hey there, Jesse Meyer. Secondly, let's try this. Okay. Third, let's say, where is that file name bullshit happening? Right here, here, and here. There we go. It's a little closer to reasonable. Alright, so that should have saved a couple lines. Nice. Down 10. Or was it 9? Something like that. Was it 93 to 83 or 92 to 83? Okay. So this here finds the first quote in both directions. Buffer seek delimiter forward. Backward start. Why those aren't just returning, I don't know. But right. So the first thing it does is it tries to take the path from the current file, from the current buffer, and then it uses that to try to open a file. Of course, we already have a view, so I don't know why we do this. Oh, it's because we're changing active panel first. Okay. Okay. Give me a second to imagine the way I would actually like this to work. So, you say open the file in these quotes in the other panel. First, it looks at, we need to get the string that we're using, the base string that's inside the quotes. So it looks to see, can I search backwards and forwards and extract that string? That's all fine. Then if it can find that range, it then gets a string and says, okay, excuse me, we're going to try a couple of different ways to use this string to open up a file. The following things could be the correct approach. One, it might be that from the this buffer's current position, we do a search. So we then read the buffer's file name. We replace its name with the name of the thing we just looked at, and we try to open it. If that fails, we could also try and see if that, well, we should first see if that if a buffer with that name already exists, I feel like. Okay, let me try a few things. First of all, view open file. So never new just basically means that it will fail if file doesn't exist. We're passing in a full file path, right? Yes. That's the idea. Okay, so I actually don't want to change this too much. As much as it pains me to say it, it doesn't seem like it's actually a very easy thing to get right. And so I'm going to leave it at this level of correctness for now. I don't get it. Where is this defined? Here it is. We are going to change this a little bit. So, change active panel. There we go. Alright, so that increases the line count a little bit, but But what we can do now is we can go, instead of changing the active panel directly, we can do view equals get active view app in the view we've got, and we can say if that view exists, then open a panel or open the file in that view, and if this succeeds, then we can set the active view to the view. This fixes a problem where it will change the active view even if it fails to open the file, which is just a little bit annoying. And since it happens like half the time, I'd rather remove that as a possibility. I think we can clean that up and make this work better sometime soon, but for now we'll leave it at this, and we're going to put this under default framework, I think. Maybe under base commands, which is a little bit more descriptive of what this is. Florian3321 says, "It's so cool that 4coder has a demo. Just discovered that." Yeah, I'm glad that you appreciate it. A lot of people have downloaded the demo. I mean, based on the download numbers and the purchase numbers and the number of downloads from people who did a purchase, I get a lot of demo downloads, which means a lot of people are finding use in or at least a lot of people are checking it out. I guess maybe they're not necessarily finding use in it. But yeah, curious to find out how your demo experience is. I don't know if I don't hear from them a lot or what, but I think that I just don't have a very strong sense of if the demo is useful to people as an editor or not. Like, I know there are people who buy it and do their own customizations who get a lot of leverage out of that, but I don't know if people who don't have that customization capability also sometimes end up liking it and using it as is, or what happens there. So again, just would be curious to find out what your feedback is, if you ever have any, on the demo in particular. Open in other. Isn't that what this one already does? Okay. I think that this one does not belong at all. Yeah. Oh. No, this isn't correct. Begins an open file query Open file dialog in the Yeah, that can't happen there. That has to happen down here, I guess. File navigation. Ooh, some more file navigation stuff. We can take this and put it right here with this thing, as these are. This also qualifies as file navigation. Open matching file. View buffer, other panel, swap buffers between panels. Yep, that's all fairly related here. We're almost done now. Okay. For this, I will definitely create a another file. Okay. Now, let me take a quick peek. Been at it for an hour and 10 minutes. Alright, I'm gonna try not to take super long breaks today because I only have until about 6 and I want to get in a good 6 hours, so I won't take a super long break, but in another 10 minutes or so I will turn the stream off for a moment to fill up on water, which is about, I mean, it's about half full still, but might as well keep it full. And, you know, walk around for a minute, and I'll be back when I do that. But in the last 10 minutes here, before it's time to take a break, let's find a way to be productive for 10 minutes worth of productiveness. So, Alright, so all the headers are in this section here are now cleaned up. These are still set up as single header libraries, which I'm going to change because it just drives me crazy. So that's going to go away. This is some macro stuff, and this is just some other nonsense that brings in all these headers here. Yeah, so we'll think about this kind of stuff at some point in the future, not today, but I am going to... Why isn't this annotated normally? Yeah, okay. Generated app functions, libs here. Types and so on and so on. Yeah, what else is in that API? So that is just version, custom, and types. Okay, and then there's generated and lib. Okay, understood. It's getting pretty cleaned up at this point. Oh, Jonathan Blow is planning to switch to 4coders at some point? Do you mean like, I'd have to look at the context. Was this, I'm imagining him saying it, and in my head I'm hearing like, was he saying that he's planning to switch as soon as he has a chance? Or more like, someday I'll check it out and, whatever, when I don't mind possibly losing the time that I would sink into it, or what? Because I could imagine it going all kinds of different ways. Now, how would I pitch 4coder? Why would you use it over another editor? So my main pitch for 4coder is that it is lean and minimalistic, which is not meant to be a general appeal, but a specialized appeal. If you want lean and minimalistic, and you want to be able to code your customization of your editor in C or C++. That's the pitch. So, like, I feel like the idea is to hit the niche, not that it's super general right now. So, for instance, a user who uses Emacs has the most reason to switch, unless they really prefer Lisp to C++, I guess, would be another way to put it. But that's the condensed version of the pitch. I don't know if it's appealing or not, but that's it. Right now, the full version is just $12. And that's like the full alpha version. I think it'll get I'll price it up a little bit when I have more confidence in its quality. But right now, it's sort of meant to be low so that it's more like a minimum suggested donation to keeping the project in play is how I'm thinking about it. It's not really enough money coming in from that to make it a sustainable project, but I am also not offering something that's so high quality that you would pay more than that, I feel like. Yeah, so the problem with Vim, and the reason Vim users don't switch as often as Emacs users, is that although the scripting system is also better, if you're a Vim user, you want those Vim commands, and you don't want to have to implement them all, and 4coder doesn't have them built in. I feel like as soon as I can say that 4coder has built-in Vim custom like maps, that lots of Vim users would have a good reason to switch. So yeah, I think Vim users would switch as soon as Vim bindings were available. The only reason Vim users generally don't switch is because Vim users tend to be like, I can't remember how to edit without Vim bindings anymore. Like it's just they love the modal setup for Vim too much to switch off. Now, I kind of have a plan to write a 4coder modal that'll be different from Vim. It'll also be different from Casey's modal. Basically, I have some concepts in mind that I think blow both of the. Casey didn't really try to go like super smart into it. He might have plans for that kind of thing, but when he wrote his modal, he was just like doing the simplest possible port to a no modifiers version of his editing scheme. But as far as Vim goes, so it's not really fair for me to talk about whether or not I can beat that, because I don't feel like he put any effort into it to make the bindings that clever. But I have some ideas for how to beat the Vim modal stuff pretty easily. If tomorrow the community would be ready to fund the development, would you be ready to work on 4coder full time? That's a tough question. It depends on what you mean by fund, because if the money that was coming in was sufficient, for a definition sufficient that I will keep private for now, I would, yes. But if it was just like, it would have to be more than just enough, you know what I mean? I'm making enough money at RAD right now, plus I get to work with smart people on a daily basis, that if I was not making at least that much money, I don't think I would switch to 4coder full time, because I would also be giving up the cool projects that I do there, the stuff I work on with people there. So it would have to at least match my current income, and even then I'd have to consider it. I mean, I wouldn't have to fully give it up because I'm still in the area now. But I feel like I want to spend at least a few years like working in the industry, doing the kind of getting like experience next to people where I can learn still. I mean, in the last like year and a half, my skills have gone up way faster than they ever did in the past because I was working professionally, and I want to keep that going for a little while longer just so I can build up that. But if in a year or so I could see myself considering that maybe more seriously, but I don't think that that's gonna happen unless the money was really reliable for some reason, like really good for some reason. Cache Override asks, what C++ features do you use? Okay, so there's like there's like two orders to that. Like there's like, well, three actually, three orders of how I use C++. On the first order, there's like no, not this file. Give me a different one. 4coder.h. Okay. So one thing I take advantage of is obviously that your struct definitions are a little tighter, right? That's like day one, and even if I wasn't using anything else, I would still compile with C++ just to have this behavior. And And the second, so that's like tier 1. So you'd have to really bend my arm to get me to compile with a .c file just because of that. And that might sound like a trivial thing because it's the difference of like typing that and copying this here. But it means that renaming things is a bigger pain in the ass. It means that there's more code all over the place, and I just don't like it. Second, operator overloading for vectors, kind of exclusively for vectors, and a few matrix operations on certain projects I've operated before, and that's all there is there, right? Pretty self-explanatory, I hope. And now let's do a quick search. Yeah, so it looks like I don't have any uses of the class keyword, but I probably wouldn't anyway. Let me just check for sure here. Alright, so I don't even have any examples of this in the 4coder code base, but once in a rare while I will make a constructor-destructor thing. And that's like the third tier for a very rare case. Actually, I'll show you something really cool that is also in the third tier that I came up with recently at Rad. I actually saw something like this in their code, and then I worked on it a bunch and made my own thing out of it. So let me find a good spot where I can demo this. Let's go to base commands, insert character, write character. There we go. So this is not a good place to go to for an example of why you want this, but once in a while it can be handy to be like, you know what, I'm just going to want like a little function in here that, you know, does some operation, right? And then you can call it over here, and the idea is that, and obviously 4coder doesn't even want to lay this thing out correctly, but the idea is that, maybe if I do it this way it will. Okay, so the idea is that this is like scoped inside of this procedure so that it's only callable from in here. You couldn't call it over here, right? This wouldn't be allowed, but this is allowed because it's scoped here, but that's not allowed in C++ or in C, right? But sometimes it's handy. So there's the thing you can do to get around this, to get a similar semantic without actually directly doing it, which is you can go struct foo static local, right? And now you can call it by going foo local 3, 4, right? That'll actually compile. So you can basically get that as long as you're willing to wrap it in a struct and make it a static member function of that struct. Okay. But I don't like my code looking like this because it's like at 2 extra levels of indentation to start defining your local procedures. It's a pain in the butt. So what do? Well, there's a couple tricks. One is I create a thing up here that says foo, and it's going to go like this. Foo is a pointer to a procedure taking an int x, y, and returning an int. And I'll set it to 0 right there. Then I'm going to make something right here that's like foo, maybe local, and then have the macro expander append a line number on there, right? And then, actually you can't do that if I remember correctly, but you can do like local proc underscore foo. Okay. And then here we put local, And then at the end, we're going to put foo equals local proc foo local, right? And now we can call it normally, like this, but we haven't fixed this indentation problem. But what we can do is we can then make these all wrapped up in macros look like this. Begin local proc, and then this will be, usually I do it like this, the name of the procedure, the return type, and then the parameter list. Int x, int y, boom, right? And that will cover everything. That'll be able to define this line. That can define this line. We'll talk about this one in a sec. And I can even define all of this, right? It can define the static int because it knows this int here. It can just throw local. That's just a pre-hard-coded name. It can throw that in there, so I do that. And then I can just write return 2 times x plus y. Remember, these are my parameters, and that's my return type. Then I have to do end local proc foo. That can put in this extra brace semicolon, and it can assign foo. And so then, like that, you have a local procedure, right? So this is very close to what you would want. You have to put foo on the front and back of the thing, and eliminating this is pretty hard if you also want to be able to call this normally, unless you do some crazy operator overloading stuff maybe. There might be a way to make it happen. I'm not sure. I couldn't find one. So this is a trick that I've been using. In fact, I take it a step further and turn these local procedures into full-on closures by having a special arena that I can do like this. So I do push closure, and then I can be like closure arena, and then the type of the thing I'm pushing. Maybe I'm pushing user input in, and then right here I do pop closure, user input in, and now I can do something like if in.type equals user input key, etc. Right? So in this way I've tunneled this in variable through here, and all you have to do is set it up so that you have an arena that comes in right here like this, right? So that's all. The reason I say all that is that's a C++ dependent trick. You have to have the ability to do function members inside of structs, right? So that's something I use C++ for. Later. Alright, where does that leave us off over here? Ah, we're back up. Back up to crossed. It's line counts is going up. Moobles asks, don't like C++ lambdas. Yeah, I have a couple problems with C++ lambdas. So one problem is if you don't have any captures, right? If your lambda is not using captures at all, then that you can do, say you have like a thing which takes callback, and then you define, forgive me if I get the syntax wrong, but I think that's correct. Right? So there, that will actually decay to a function pointer like in the normal way, right? And so that's kind of cool. And if I had to, all I would do is I would define lambda, and then I would use that, right? I would have no problem using that. But the problem is, you also want captures, and that then breaks down. You can't. That doesn't decay to a function pointer directly, right? You can't. If this callback thing takes a callback, which is a pointer to a function that takes 2 ints and returns an int, and then I do capture the in, even by value, then it doesn't actually decay to the pointer type directly. And so in order to call that, you have a couple of options. Like in order to pass that to something that doesn't know what captures you're going to be taking, you have to do a couple of things. You have a couple of options of what you can do. One thing you can do is you can wrap that in a class. Like you can store that in a class that has a parent class. So you could do something like callable pointer callable equals make callable, boom, right? In fact, you could even just do make callable, except then you're going to want to free this later, right? You have to do like a delete callable down here at some point. And the idea is that this is going to create this is going to be a template function, basically. Make callable is a template that takes in this thing no matter what type it is, and then it creates a specialized like base class that's been templatized, and I don't want to go down that whole road. Another option is to just use the standard library. Definitely don't want to go down that road. That standard library just does all the things I just described anyway. Finally, you could also make this into a template. Then it could take this thing, right, if you define it this way. Right, so now that'll work because it doesn't specify what type this is, so the fact that these lambdas generate weird sort of anonymous types when you have captures on them won't be a problem, because this f can be any type, including a weird anonymous type. But I don't want to go down that road either, so I don't really use these. Even though in this case they'd be kind of nice, it's just like as a feature. I don't want to mix this lambdas with my own management of closures, which I'm going to have to do anyway, since I don't want to use C++ closures because they're all messed up on the type system. So since I'm managing closures myself anyway, I'm just like, no, I don't want to mix and match. Alright, so I think we found a good way to spend our time, which was me chatting with you guys. I'm going to stop the stream, be back in 5 minutes for more. See you in a minute.